Peloton isn't just about bikes and treadmills. It's a team of instructors ready to motivate you 24/7. There are literally thousands of classes ranging from strength training and yoga to running and boxing. And it doesn't matter if you have 5 minutes or an hour. Peloton is where you'll find what works for you on your schedule. Oh, and the music is absolutely iconic. Motivation that moves you, anytime, anywhere. Try the Peloton bike or tread risk-free for 30 days. Learn more at onepeloton.com. New members only. Terms apply.
What is going on, Laker fans? Thank you very much for tuning in. Appreciate you guys being a part of the show. Monday night, this is 1 week in the books here of Lakers basketball. Last week when we did this, we had not started yet, and 3 games in the books. Still no W for the Lakers. We got a lot to get into. Why the Lakers are sitting 0-3 at this point. The biggest storylines from the week. What the Lakers are going to do around all this attention with Russ. The latest on the trade front. I saw some stuff earlier in the week. Something from Woj, something from Shams that just talks about potential scenarios for the Lakers. And I want to also welcome in Jovan Buha coming up at about 7:30 of The Athletic. We'll get his thoughts on the first week of Lakers basketball as well. As always enjoy talking Lakers basketball, Laker fans out there. So if you're out and about, you're driving around, listening on the ESPN LA app, however you're tuning into us, 877-710-ESPN. You could always shoot me a call. You could also hit me on Twitter at Alan Sliwa. 0-3 Laker fans. That's the start for the Los Angeles Lakers, 0-3. Let me recap the week here real quick, okay? Because I think there's certain losses and, certain games on the schedule. You could tell right out the gate, you're like, I'll be surprised if the Lakers win that one. That, to me, was the first game against Golden State Warriors. The Lakers, first off, didn't play all that well. They found themselves, I know at the end of the first half, they're only down 7, but it was misleading. They should have been down by a lot more. The Warriors, that's just the class of the NBA. There's different classes in the league, and they're definitely in their own league with just a handful of teams that are up in that, caliber. So losing to the Golden State Warriors in your first game, a new head coach, a lot of new faces. Yes, LeBron, AD, and Russ, they're there, but for the most part, you got a lot of new faces. And even LeBron, AD, and Russ, they only played 21 games together last week. That continuity, there really isn't continuity, I think, right now at this point. Okay, then you got the Clippers on Thursday night. That's another team. If I want to just kind of sit back and make excuses, which I'm sure Laker fans are not interested in hearing, but for the sake of trying to be fair to the Lakers, let me make some excuses, and then we can get into it from there. The Clippers, that's another team that you could look at and say, all right, they're incredibly deep. They got a lot of good players. They got a chance to be one of the teams that comes out of the Western Conference. Now we'll see what happens. I think sometimes you could almost have too much depth. Okay, what guys are you going to really depend on? Everybody buy into the system. We'll see what happens with the Clippers. But the Lakers played them on Thursday, and we're actually in the game. If it wasn't for awful shooting by the Lakers from a number of players, I know, what was it? If you took Russ, Kendrick Nunn, and Patrick Beverley, I think they were 1 for 25 from the field. 1 for 25 from the field. That's how bad those 3 players were, shooting percentage and everything else. But you had a game. In the fourth quarter, there was a point where you thought the Lakers actually might win the game. There was a highlight play with maybe 6-7 minutes left. Braun gets a block on PG. Austin Reeves gets it, throws up an alley-oop to Lonnie Walker, and Lakers have a 2-point lead. But they couldn't hold on to that lead, and before you kind of walked away, you're like, all right, 0-2. It's not the biggest surprise or shock. I think a bigger surprise is if the Lakers split those first 2 games. And then you had yesterday against the Portland Trail Blazers. So yesterday against the Blazers, they had no business losing yesterday to the Portland Trail Blazers. None. And if you want to ask the question of why are the Lakers sitting 0-3, I think everybody let me use this as an example. Earlier today, I'm doing the show with Travis. There are a lot of different narratives. When John came in for Super Crosstalk, he basically was like, look, their three-point shooting is so bad, and it is, 21%, that there's no reason why they should be in any of these games for how poorly they're shooting from the three-point line and the fact that they keep taking threes. I want to say they had one game 40 attempts. another game 45, another game 33. Yesterday was, I think, the game that they had 33 attempts against the Blazers. So they keep shooting it knowing that they're not hitting any of these shots. They're 21% from the three-point line. Everyone could, kind of find an angle of why the Lakers are sitting at 0-3. I thought the game against the Blazers, it was as simple as, okay, you can have a bad shooting night. You can have poor decisions. You can have maybe some questionable coaching calls, but you're up 7 with 2 minutes left to go. You got veterans that are there. You got players who've been in the NBA for a long time. Close out the game. I don't think anybody's asking for too much here. Close out the game against the Portland Trail Blazers. We all know how difficult the schedule is for the Lakers here over the first couple of weeks of the season. You don't really have a margin for error. And they let a Portland Trail Blazers team steal a win at Crypto.com yesterday. And here are the Lakers, obviously sitting 0-3 now. However you want to point out what the problem is with the Lakers through the first 3 games, for me, it's much more specific to the game yesterday because that one was a legitimate, hey, you should have won this game. How did you end up losing? However you want to point it out. I guess you could say the attention and the what's the best way to put this? It reminds me a lot of last year. Let's put it that way. Now, I know the roster is different. I know, obviously the veterans that were here last season, the Carmelos, we started the season, Rondo was here, DeAndre Jordan was there, Dwight Howard was there, Trevor Ariza. I know the Lakers obviously got rid of a lot of those players. And I think it's unfortunate that they're 0-3 because I think there are some good stuff that the Lakers have done on the defensive side. I think there is some real opportunity. I'm a fan of Darvin Ham. They can't hit a shot if their life depended on it. But the attention is continuing to go in one direction. The attention continues to go. Over these first 3 games, there is so much chatter and conversation about Russ already, right? Like take yesterday's game as an example. There's no way you can kind of avoid this. Russ doesn't play through plays through the 3 quarters, and then fourth quarter he's benched and comes in around the 4:40 mark, 4:30 mark, something like that. I might be off, but he comes in some point in that 4-minute mark. And he's in the game, and the defense is, when I say they're not paying attention to Russ, I'm talking about they're not paying attention to Russ. I'm talking about there is not a defender within 10 feet of where Russell Westbrook is. And, of course, you're noticing that over the final stretches of the game. And then Russ, we all know now, takes that ill-advised shot with, there's maybe 30 seconds left on the game clock. There is 18 seconds on the shot clock. Lakers have a 1-point lead. He said it was for 2 for 1, and it really made no sense. It was just a really, really bad decision by Russell Westbrook in that moment. And that's the only moment we really kind of take from the game, and that's the entire conversation from today about that Lakers loss. Not how poor the Lakers executed in the final 2 minutes. I would throw this in there as well. Darvin Ham even subbing Russ in. Was there a need to do that? Are you doing that to just appease Russ, or are you doing it because you thought, hey, this guy gives me the best chance to close out the game? The game prior against the Portland Trail Blazers, Russ struggles. He went 0 for 11 from the field. I think 0 for 6 from the three-point line. That was the only conversation we were having was after the game was how poorly Russ played. And that just seems to be the theme over these first 3 games so far for the Lakers season. And I just bring that up because it's a lot of similarities to what it was last season when it comes to that. And what I'm referring to there is you want to be able to talk about a lot of these games of just, okay, Lakers won, this is why they won. Or Lakers lost, and this is why they lost. That is so far from the conversation now. It just seems like everything, all that energy keeps going towards Russell Westbrook. What did he do? Did he do this right? Did he do this wrong? Everything seems so magnified. Every single moment seems so magnified. And everything is obviously revolving around Russ. And I kind of feel a couple different ways about this. The amount of attention that he's getting, and especially now that the Lakers are sitting 0-3. And by the way, they're not 0-3 just because of Russell Westbrook, all right? They're not. And if you think they are, I don't think you're watching some of these Laker games. The question is just how big of a distraction one individual player has become around this franchise. I was trying to, kind of prepping for the show today. I was saying to myself, I'm like, okay, how can we look at Russ and look at kind of what he brings to the table every single night, how much of a distraction, how can you weigh the positives and the negatives? It's no secret the Lakers obviously spent the offseason trying to see if they could work out a deal for Russ. I don't think it's any secret that we all know that front office would prefer finding a trade partner, and I'm sure Russ would prefer. Can't speak for him, can't speak for the front office. I'm just assuming here that Russ would love to find a trade partner as well, and both sides can just kind of go their separate ways, and you just kind of reset everything. Russ can reset as a player, and the Lakers can reset as an organization. There's no secret that any of that stuff has gone through their mind, and I'm sure goes through Russ's mind on a day-to-day basis. I want to do this when we come back. I know the Lakers are 0-3, and unfortunately, the only conversation that just won't go away is what the Lakers do with Russ. I think there are three things that can be done when it comes to Russell Westbrook, and I guess the best way I could put it, Lakers are going to have to figure out one of these angles, and hopefully it's sooner than later, because I think where this team is sitting right now and the amount of attention that's going towards Russ, and really, he's not much of a factor on the court. He's just not. So it'd be different if Russ was a player that was providing everything that you needed when he was on the floor. He was playing a specific role, that he wasn't a distraction, that it wasn't A, B, C, or D. And I'm going to keep putting my hand up when I say this. He's not the only reason why the Lakers are 0-3. There are other reasons why, and if you think it's just Russ, I really don't think you're watching Lakers basketball. However, that whole situation with Russ is not helpful. So let's do this when we come back. If you want to be a part of the show, 877-710-ESPN. There are three things that the Lakers can do with Russ. We'll go over it when we come back. Stay right here. Appreciate you guys being a part of the show. This is Lakers Talk on 710 ESPN.
Let me guess. Unknown caller? You could reduce the number of unwanted calls and emails with online privacy protection. The latest innovation from Discover will help regularly remove your personal info, like your name and address, from 10 popular people search websites that could sell your data. And we'll do it for free. Activate in the Discover app. See terms and learn more at discover.com/online privacy protection.
Quick shout out. Thank you to Valvoline Instant Oil Change, one of our partners here on Lakers Talk. Oil changes, tire rotations, transmission care, and more. Just pull up, drive in, and drive out in about 15 minutes. Visit SoCalOilChange.com for a location and game-winning coupons off your next Valvoline Instant Oil Change. Lakers got a 3-game road trip or 2-game road trip coming up. They got 3 games this week in total. At Denver, at Minnesota, home against Denver. So certainly it's not going to get much easier for the Lakers. Listen, I'm trying to throw out scenarios here. I think I hate that there's so much attention going to one player. I just hate it. And I'm sure the organization hates it. I'm sure Russ hates it and wish it wasn't like this. And I know Laker fans feel the same way. I want to talk about the Lakers competing and trying to get back into that playoff picture and compete for a championship. And right now that seems pretty far-fetched at the moment. One of 3 things, in my opinion, can happen right now with all this attention that's going towards Russ. One thing that can happen is you just continue to play him. So let me use as an example these first 3 games. Russ is in the starting lineup. He's getting pretty good minutes, and he's in critical situations in the game like he was in this past game against the Blazers. My preference is, if you're going to play him, have it 100% based on production. So I didn't think yesterday there was a reason to bring Russ back in since he hadn't played the entire fourth quarter. Maybe Darvin Ham is saying to himself, look, this is a former MVP. This is early in the season. I don't want to lose the guy. Let me bring him in and see if we could close this thing out. And it backfired. And it wasn't just Russ coming in. It was trying to run the clock out without really running any plays. Now, you could make the case, well, what plays are you going to run when you got a guy like Nurkic, who's sitting in the middle 15 feet away from Russell Westbrook and basically just begging the Lakers to shoot dumpers, and they did. Patrick Beverley took a 26-footer. Bron took a 25-footer, a 26-footer, whatever it was. Russ ended up pulling up, like I said, with 30 seconds left, taking a jumper. So the Blazers kind of got exactly what they wanted. So one thing that the Lakers can do at this point with Russ is don't change anything. Just keep doing what you're doing. And I don't know if that's the best strategy, at least for me. If you're going to have Russ be in the lineups, make sure you're using him when you feel like it's necessary. And if there's another guy playing better than him, then you know what? It's just too bad. Russ should be on the sidelines. That's one thing you could do. Another thing you could do, which is, you know, my partner that I do the show with in the morning with Travis Rogers, he has continued to say, why don't you just send him home? Why don't you have him not part of the organization? You know, that way all that noise just quiets down. You can start using players that you think you're probably going to use as the season progresses, and it's not going to, or at least it shouldn't, kind of take away from some of your trade value. Most anybody who's going to trade for Russ, they're not looking to get Russ and put him in the lineup and have him play 65, 70 games or whatever the case is whenever he got traded. They want Russ because it's more of an expiring contract and you could get some potential draft compensation on top of it. The only other thing to do after that is obviously trade Russ. Here's the one thing that whatever the Lakers decide to do, and I'm sure that front office obviously has a plan. I mean, hell, they had the entire summer to try to figure this thing out, and if they didn't do it, I'm assuming it's because teams know that the Lakers need to trade Russ, want to trade Russ, and they were probably trying to fleece the Lakers. No one's trying to help the Los Angeles Lakers. We know that. The question it comes down to is, do you have time to wait? Because there was a report from Woj. This was, I want to say, late last week. I'm going to read some of it. ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski reported that a trade involving Russell Westbrook isn't likely until after Thanksgiving. Kevin O'Connor wrote this on The Ringer. That's around the same time that Dennis Schroeder, who at this point, just goes back to Dennis Schroeder coming back from his thumb surgery. But the key point here is that Woj is talking about probably not until after Thanksgiving. After Thanksgiving, as I load up the Lakers schedule right now, you're talking another 30 days at minimum. Okay, how many games between that? 3, there's another. You got probably another 10, 12 games. Spurs is 15 games there, 16, 17, 18. You got about 20 more games if you could take it through November. The Lakers have that much time. Do they have that much time to kind of kick back and wait? Again, and I'm going to go back to this. If that's what's in the best interest of the organization, then you know what, you got to do what's in the best interest of the organization. If it does not make sense to trade Russ because what teams are asking back for in return, and Shams Charania had something that I'll get into, which actual, you know, a trade, some interest in a specific player from a specific team. I'm not asking the Lakers by any stretch of the imagination. I know Laker fans aren't as well, saying, hey, make a bad move that doesn't make sense for the Lakers. Nobody's saying that that's what they should do. But if you're talking about that Thanksgiving window, that Thanksgiving time frame right there, you're talking that you're probably 23 games in, somewhere around there. Let's say you're 20 games in. Okay, 20 games in is 25% of the season. Laker fans, I don't have to tell you guys, I could actually honestly say I don't know the first W for the Lakers at this point, because at Denver is a really tough game coming up on Wednesday. They're a good team. At Minnesota should be a tough game. I saw something earlier today. I don't know. The Timberwolves are getting, I think, blown out by the San Antonio Spurs. So that could be the case in that one. Yeah, Spurs won by 9. So Timberwolves are 2-2. Maybe there's an opportunity against the Timberwolves there that wasn't there before. We'll see what eventually happens. But you're at Minnesota. Every team gets up to play the Lakers, and it's not like the Lakers are playing flawless basketball. So at Minnesota or at Denver will be tough. At Minnesota will be tough. Then you're home against Denver. Then you're home against the Pelicans. All 4 of those teams that I just mentioned were all teams that were in the playoffs last year. Do I think the Lakers are going to start out 0-7? I'd like to think that they're not. Okay, let's say they start out 2-5. Let's say, best case scenario through the first 15 games, you're 7-8. And that's me being way optimistic and just assuming that they're just going to stack up W's against teams that they're probably not going to, that they won't be favorites to beat. Let me put it that way. I mentioned that when I talk about the time, how much time do the Lakers have? That's a real question. The real question, when it comes down to looking at when you make a decision and how many L's are you potentially, how many L's are you stacking up in the process? That is a concern. That is definitely, a worry for the Lakers that you kind of want to pay attention to. And the scenarios that they have in front of them, they don't really have time to their advantage. Like I said, in the Western Conference, it's already such a tough, challenge in front of them. You don't want to dig yourself too deep of a hole. And there might be a scenario where, whether you want to see that or not, a hole might be dug either way. Let me grab a quick call here because I do want to end up going to Jovan Buha, the Athletic. He's going to come up next. Daniel in Santa Monica. What's going on, Daniel?
Hey, what's going on, Al? Thanks for taking my call.
You got it, man.
Just real quick, just a couple points on kind of, and I'm right there with you, man. I wish we could talk about X's and O's and talk about basketball and maybe, some adjustments and this and that. But I think the reason why we can't is because we're just fundamentally flawed, not only from a basketball standpoint, but I think it's so flawed that it runs deeper. I hate to say it. Look, I've been watching the Lakers for 20-plus years in the NBA, and it just feels so like New York Knicks. Like LeBron, I guess, wanted Westbrook here, but don't we have a general manager who makes the last decision and should know better about, hey, this is not a good fit. We got this other deal on the table. This is going to work. There should be some kind of like front office competence and oversight to avoid these kind of disaster situations that we're kind of in. And my last point is that I feel like, I don't think we should really make a big trade because I guess it doesn't necessarily put us, where we might want to be, or maybe we don't rush to do that. But I kind of feel like, again, the way to fix this fundamentally is for the front office to put their big boy pants on and be like, look, stay home, because you've already proven to us in 3 games that you're not a team player. You have a social responsibility to your teammates. You're talking about hamstring strains because they're coming off the bench. You're disrespecting the game and your teammates by saying that kind of stuff. Stay home. Let's ride with the guys that had an 8-point lead going into – I watched that whole fourth quarter. I was so bummed when we went, just because of, I guess, whatever, just lineups and minutes and this and that, where we had to throw him back in at the end. And I was watching my buddy, and I was like, man, this lead's going to go away because I just think – and it wasn't just about him, right? It wasn't just that one shot. But from an energy standpoint, he just kind of – it's not working, And
so Danny, I'm going to jump in here. I'm going to jump in here. Yeah. I'm going to jump in, and it's a good call, so I appreciate you calling in. I think the Knicks of the West, trust me, Lakers are nowhere near that franchise. You go look at the history of the New York Knicks, and when's the last? I think they've been in the playoffs once since the 2013-2014 season. Their last championship was. I might be wrong here, but I literally think it was the Phil Jackson days. It was something like that. It was that long ago was the last Knicks championship. So Lakers nowhere near that. But I get what you're trying to get at. Listen, I've asked this from the beginning, and I'm a big fan of Darvin Ham. I really am. And maybe I like his makeup in the league. I like how he came up in the league. I like how the type of player he was, and I think he really understands that roll up your sleeves and just freaking grind and go to work. I like it. I like his history in the coaching pedigree so far to get where he's sitting. He should feel absolutely no pressure or there's nothing that should dictate whether Westbrook should be in there for what Westbrook has done in his past career. Nothing should happen this point forward, I think including yesterday's game, to say, well, I should appease Russ in this situation. I hope he doesn't do that. I really don't, because I think it will hurt the team if he does do that. All right, Jovan Buha, the Athletic, he's coming up next. Stay right here. Appreciate you guys tuning in. This is Lakers Talk on 710 ESPN.
This episode is brought to you by Uber. Think of a job, one where you don't have a manager, or punch a clock, where no one tells you what to do or where to be, and where you can get paid up to 5 times a day. where you can work other jobs at the same time. It's tough to think of this job because it's not a job, it's a gig, and you can make it whatever you want it to be. Start driving, start earning with Uber. Head to uber.com/startdriving to sign up.
All right, Lakers start the season off 0-3. They got 3 games this upcoming week at Denver, at Minnesota, and then home against the Denver Nuggets. I want to welcome in Jovan Buha. Does a fantastic job covering the Lakers and the NBA for The Athletic. Jovan, always appreciate you joining the show, buddy. I want to just start off getting your thoughts. 0-3, some good, some bad. Can you just give me some stuff that has stood out to you so far? Anywhere you want to go with this on the Lakers' first 3 games.
Yeah, well, I think there's been a lot of negative talk lately, and I want to start with the positive. I think that the Lakers' defense has really stood out. They have the number 2 ranked defense in the NBA in terms of, by defensive rating. And I think since day one, Darvin Ham has really preached defense. And the first few days of training camp were all defensive drills and defensive walkthroughs and really just, ironing out the basics of his defensive system. And I think you've really seen that. And, the Lakers, I think on paper, don't have a great defensive team. I wouldn't say that they have the second best group of defensive personnel in the league. And of course, it's a small sample size, so we'll see if they maintain this. But as of right now, I think I've been really impressed with their scheme, with their ability to force and generate turnovers. Anytime a ball handler is putting the ball on the floor, driving towards the paint, they've just got guys swarming them and poking at the ball and kind of collapsing on them. And I think the rotations have been impressive. So I want to, I want to highlight the defense first and foremost. I think that's something that's been encouraging. I think the other thing is LeBron and AD have both looked really good, and I think in a macro sense, like if we look at the big picture with the Lakers, they needed LeBron and AD to be at a certain level for them to have any chance. And of course, those two got to stay healthy, and that's something we'll see throughout the year. But I think so far so good on that front of, LeBron has been LeBron, and AD I think has resembled the AD we saw a couple years ago during the title season. As for the bad, I think the Russell Westbrook fit has been as bad as it was last season, if not worse. He's 4 for 26 over the last couple games, tying his own record per ESPN Stats and Info for the worst 2-game shooting stretch for a Laker over the past 50 years. So anytime you're tying your own record for the worst shooting, that's pretty bad. But I think they have a Russ problem right now. I really don't know how to frame it any other way. Like he obviously took that shot with just under 30 seconds left. That clanked in transition, and he said he was going for the 2-for-1, but that didn't even really make sense because they were up by 1. And if anything, you want to milk the clock there and get it so Portland gets 1 shot at most. So him taking that jumper just didn't really make sense. But I think a bigger problem has been the way that teams have been defending him, especially late in games. You saw the Clippers put Ivica Zubac on him, and the Blazers put Yusuf Nurkic on him, and it's really just derailing the Lakers' offense. And those guys are basically hanging out in the paint, and LeBron and AD can't really do their thing. You can't post AD, you can't run pick and roll, and Russ has not been able to beat those guys off the dribble or hit shots from the perimeter. So it's really just been like the Lakers are playing 4-on-5 offensively when Russ has been out there in these crunch time scenarios. And, also we talked about the defense looking good. Well, their offense is ranked 30th in the NBA. So the offense has been the exact opposite. And I think a big part of that has been just the limitations of Russ and how teams are guarding him. So I think through 3 games, and then of course 0-3, you don't want to start in a hole in the West. The West is so loaded. You look at how many teams are already above 500, like the Lakers are already in a mini hole, and the schedule doesn't get any easier. So I think for them, there is some pressure to just try to figure this out as soon as possible, because they could look up a week from now and easily be 1-6 or 0-7 with the way their next 4 games are.
Jovan, I'm curious. So I think everybody would agree with you that just the Russ conversation it kind of just reminds you that nothing changed from last year. It's almost like the season didn't end last year and we just started this season, and that has just continued. What happens? What do you do? Because I was just laying out. There's three options really for the Lakers. One, you continue to play him and, hopefully just make decisions based off of not feeling – I don't know what Darvin Ham felt yesterday that – I got to put this guy in, or he really felt for defensive purposes this is the right guy to have in, but we see what it does to the Lakers on offense. But A, you keep using him just the way that you are. B, you send him home and just decide, you know what, this is just not working and there isn't a solution to this. So let's just go our separate ways, and then if we find a trade down the road, we find a trade down the road. Or C, you actually do trade Russ. What do you think the Lakers do in the spot that they're in right now? Do you think what of those three scenarios do you think are most likely in the near future?
I think the most likely would be benching him at some point soon, and then potentially sending him home. From my understanding, they are kind of targeting the Thanksgiving range as when they're seriously going to pursue trade opportunities with Russ. Like, there's a chance something happens sooner than that, but typically teams want to give it the first 20, 25 games to really see where they're at. You never know what teams could underachieve and potentially have a star or even just role players become available that previously weren't available. Like right now, for example, in the beginning of the season, everybody's optimistic about their chances, but if a team that had playoff ambition starts 5-15, well, all of a sudden, maybe they're pivoting and looking at, hey, star X, we don't know if this guy really fits, or role player X, now this guy's available. So I think that the Lakers are trying to remain patient, and I think they understand that waiting till the trade deadline is probably not the wisest move, because at that point you're 50 games into the season and maybe the damage is done. And who knows, maybe the damage is done 20, 25 games in anyway. But I think kind of they're going to give it another month or so realistically, unless there's just an amazing offer within the next few weeks. So I suspect, I think the best thing to, would be to bring Russ off the bench. It's something that Darvin Ham obviously dipped his toes in the water with that and then kind of backed out. But I just think the starting lineup has not been good. They've been averaging 75 points per 100 possessions, which would just, historically awful. Like that is, it's difficult to put a lineup out there that is scoring at that, bad of a level. So I think you got to mix it up. Like, Lonnie Walker has played well. Patrick Beverley, we know, is out there for his shooting and defense. Hasn't shot the ball well, but I think that's going to progress to the mean. So really, I'm looking at that Russell Westbrook spot as, bring him off the bench, have him be the sixth or seventh man, let him get some, run the second unit offense, get some reps with AD, and just kind of do his thing in 20 minutes a night. And if he continues to struggle, then maybe you reduce those minutes, maybe you do send him home. But right now, the playing 30 minutes a night, the starting, the closing, like, the Lakers are really just hampering themselves. And I think it's too early to put this on head coach Darvin Ham, but at the same time, he was brought in, in part because he was supposed to navigate the Russell Westbrook situation better than Frank Vogel did. And to have the hard conversations, to make the tough decisions of bringing Russ off the bench, of benching him in crunch time when he hasn't played well. And thus far, aside from that, he played solid in Golden State, but the last two games have been awful. And, Darvin has still gone to him in crunch time, and it's really hurt the Lakers offense. So, I think I'm interested to see how he approaches this Denver game, and they'll likely practice tomorrow, and we'll get a better sense of it. But, like, I would not be surprised if the Denver game he's brought off the bench, or at least has his minutes reduced, because at this point, the Lakers are just losing those minutes. And I think, again, they don't have the margin for error where they can start, 0-7 or whatever with the way the schedule is. Like, they got to start winning games. So if that means Russ, Darvin said it, he's not concerned with people's ceilings. Well, if that's the case, then, the film supports it, the data supports it. And I even think, kind of reading between the lines of what some of the players were saying, they kind of support it too, of like, it's time to make a change. And I think we've seen enough through 3 games.
Jovan Buha, The Athletic, taking some time to join us here on Lakers Talk. So it's interesting, Jovan. You're right on, first off, the time. If they waited through Thanksgiving, you're talking about basically 20 games of the season gone. So 25% of the season gone, which I'm all for the don't make a trade just to make one. Make the right trade, or you know what, if you're going to have to eat this year and let's just say hypothetically a trade never came down that they thought made sense, then you walk into next offseason with that space that Russ is off the books and you still have your picks and you take your chances from there. And I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen, but it just shows you how time is working against them, because 25% into the season and the Western Conference and where the Lakers will be, that in itself just seems like an awful combination with part of the way the schedule looks. The other part about Russ coming off the bench, how do you think, and it's not, I don't want to sound, disingenuous on this, but I don't really care how Russ would feel about that, but how do you think Russ would react to that? Do you think, because this isn't just, Russ, if you want to prolong your career in the league, don't you have to show that you're able to adjust, that, hey, you're going to be a team guy, whatever it takes? He's the one that said whatever the team needs me to be or needs me to do. But if Darvin Ham decided Wednesday against the Denver Nuggets, I'm bringing Russ off the bench, I'm going to play him 20 minutes tonight, and you know what? I'm not going to close with him. If he's not having a good game, then I'm going to close with somebody that I feel like is going to help me win. How do you think Russ treats that situation?
It's really a mystery. I think based on precedent, going back to last season, he mentioned having back soreness after not being used to sitting so long, which I never bought, because I'm like, what are you doing at halftime? And what are you doing during, there'd be stretches where he would sit, end of first quarter into second quarter. And it's like, okay, well, that's an 8-minute stretch. Why is it different when you're sitting the final 8 minutes of the game in the fourth quarter? And then, of course, he had the quote earlier this season about, absolutely that him coming off the bench played into his hamstring injury. Like, that stuff to me just kind of indicates like he's not really willing or ready to come off the bench. And then I also think and I think this has been an ongoing thing really with him, is like he had the 0 for 11 performance against the Clippers, and then he gets asked about his game. And yes, he did play an impressive defensive game. He had the 5 steals and a couple of those on entry passes to Kawhi, but he says he had a solid game, and basically kind of defiantly rejecting the premise of the question. And it's like, I think if he kind of showed a level of accountability and humility of saying like, hey, I'm not shooting the ball well right now, I got to play better. I got to stay later after practice and get some shots up. Like I got to find ways to exploit teams disrespecting me by putting 7-footers on me and ignoring me. Like, I got to figure this out. But even his quotes last night were I don't know what to do. And like, he just kind of, and I know he doesn't have the best relationship with the media, and I know there's been a lot of attention on him. So like, maybe that's part of it, but I think something that would really endear him to Laker fans would be some level of accountability and acknowledgement of his poor play. And he's really never done that. I feel like you can count the times on one hand that last season he took any level of accountability for his underperformance. So I think for him, based on everything he says publicly and based on the way Darvin Ham handled the benching situation, it would indicate to me that this has been a consideration for them, that they've been a little sensitive to, like, I think everything about Russ screams, this guy cares about starting, this guy cares about his role and how many minutes he's playing. But if Darvin said it, post game, I don't care about people's feelings. Like, we got to start winning games. We got to make some changes. Like, then that to me would indicate there really is no argument for keeping Russell Westbrook in the starting lineup. Again, the data doesn't support it. The film doesn't support it. And, Chauncey Billups was talking about, we just wanted Nurkic on him to ignore him. And, like, you got an opposing coach talking about when your player's that way, like, that is very detrimental. So, I think there's a fear that, I know with last season's coaching staff, there was a fear that, Frank Vogel refused to bring Russell Westbrook off the bench because he was nervous that would, they would lose Russ and it would kind of become this distraction and they weren't really sure how to handle that. So they refrained from doing that. But Darvin Ham has been empowered to do that, and it's now, I think, on him to, follow through on that and do what's best for the team, which is bringing Russ off the bench and reducing his minutes. And if he continues to struggle, potentially cutting him from the rotation.
Jovan, it's an interesting storyline to say the least. I think the point that you just made at the end there about, now it's up to Darvin Ham to make those decisions. I couldn't agree more. Let's see what he ends up doing. But I appreciate your time, buddy. I know you've got great insight, and always appreciate you joining the show and giving some of that insight here to Laker fans.
Thank you, man. It's crazy. We're not even a week into this thing.
I know. What the heck just happened here?
The drama's at 10 out of 10.
Jovan, thank you, brother. I appreciate it, all right?
All right.
All right, that's Jovan Buha, the Athletic. He's right. There were only 3 games in already. I already have a headache. Okay, Lake fans, final thoughts when we come back. Stay right here. If you want to be a part of the show, I can try to squeeze in a couple calls. 877-710-ESPN. Lakers Talk on 710 ESPN. Thank you again to Jovan Buha, the Athletic. There was a report I saw. Was it earlier today? It might have been yesterday. This was on conversation. This is Shams Charania and the conversation on the Lakers still potentially having some, I want to read the exact here, still potentially having some interest in Terry Rozier. Terry Rozier is over in Charlotte. And I don't know, what the latest is going to be or if the Lakers will end up making some type of move in the next 30 days or something along those lines. But, part of this report is that the Lakers have high interest in Hornets Terry Rozier. It's funny because when I just started looking at the deal, I'm like, all right, Terry Rozier, what's this guy owed? 4 years, $96 million left on his contract. I think they'd have to throw in another guy. Just it's not enough money there because Russ makes $47 million in this final year. So you can get a Kelly Oubre who's $12.5 million. His contract is expiring. I think Gordon Hayward is $30 million plus another $30 next year. So you'd probably have to add something else to make those numbers work. Teams are going to try to, this is the tough position that the Lakers are in. Teams are going to try to take advantage of the Lakers needing to do something in that situation. They're going to try to take advantage of it. And it's not just draft pick compensation. It's also they want to clean their books out. So if Terry Rozier's got 4 years, $96 million left, and Charlotte's like, well, we don't want that contract, they're going to try to throw it to the Lakers. And just Terry Rozier seemed like a guy that is going to come to the Lakers, and all of a sudden everything's going to change. Not in my eyes. Quick shout-out here, Valvoline Instant Oil Change. Home of the 15-minute drive-through oil change. Make sure you visit SoCalOilChange.com for location and game-winning coupons off your next Valvoline Instant Oil Change. We appreciate their partnership on the show. Couple things I'll just take away from this show and that conversation with Jovan Buha. I think what he said at the end there was it's up to Darvin Ham now to see what he can do and what he will do with Russ. And I think the situation of bringing him in off the bench, I love the idea. I think that's what we should have done to start the season. We'll see if he ends up doing that. But the noise isn't getting any quieter. Let's put it that way. Lake fans, always appreciate you guys being a part of the show. Thank you to Michael Funches, Mario Ruiz for helping out with the show today. And if you miss any part of the show, just go to that ESPN LA app. You can catch everything there. I'll be back on Wednesday. LA, have a great rest of your night.